The War Department is a fascinating office of the early U.S. government. So if you go back to the Constitution, it sets up a federal government with responsibilities for various parts of American life. The War Department had responsibilities for raising and maintaining the armies and many issues pertaining to national security. Many people see War Office and they assume this is the forerunner of the Pentagon and it has to do with soldiers and battle tactics. And that's really not the case. So what we discovered is that the War Department, because it is involved in so many parts of American life that are adjacent to the military. So it is the nation's largest consumer of fabric, clothing, gunpowder, rations, all these things that you need to raise an army and maintain an army. After World War II, when it becomes not the Department of War, but the Department of Defense, it's made to make the office seem a little less belligerent, right? The Department of War versus the Department of Defense. And the Department of Defense absorbs a few other responsibilities, but they are the lineage traces straight through.
So a lot of the stuff that gets preserved from the early Republic period is more from the elites or from people with money or because someone's sibling or brother or wife or daughter thought it was important to save. And so there are these more ordinary people like the soldiers who are getting pensions, like the clerks themselves, whose lives at least touch on here. You can discover just a little bit from what's in the papers of the War Department. And I think it does really give you an idea of what the government was and wasn't doing at that time, because it is basically the federal government, most of the federal government in the early Republic. And it's doing things that we don't really associate with what's now the Department of Defense, but also just how it interacts with the people is not necessarily the way we really think of the federal government acting. The contracts between suppliers and the War Department give you an idea of just the amount of goods that were needed to supply troops and militias. And it's an insight into food history, right? So because you've got what food are they ordering, in what quantity, and how are they going to ration that out? And just the amount of like lard and sugar and bread and meat and chocolate, which was a medical supply. The Papers of the War Department starts in 1784. The Constitution is not ratified until 1789. And so it actually covers this Confederation period that frequently gets kind of glossed over, and just people just skip most of the 1780s altogether. And there are documents in the Papers of the War Department where members of the War Department are discussing the Constitution and talking about will it be ratified and the various objections that politicians have. And so you can really get into the early debates about whether the Constitution should even be a thing, and early debates about the Bill of Rights. And so that what we now consider to be a foundational document of American public life and just the entire nation was this new concept that people just weren't sure about. And ordinary people, well, federal employees and government contractors and just normal people discussing what is this thing, that's in the Papers of the War Department. So because widows were entitled to pensions, you get women in the War Department. And they talk about their experiences of the Revolution and their relationships with their husbands and their experiences of life after the Revolution in petitioning. And there's some interesting insights there into the way women used language when they petitioned the government and how they presented themselves and their families.